We're going to go through a bit of a flow here. We're going to start with subspecialty matches. We're going to get into a bit of an overview on the match outcomes, some details around the opportunities that are available, participation, and some of the choices that have been made, primarily around applicants who make a variety of choices as they're going through their selection process. Some detailed outcomes, to look about a little bit, and some new elective information that's been made available last fall, and then a deeper dive into unmatched Canadian medical grads and unfilled positions. So subspecialty matches, we have 3 subspecialty matches, which I'm sure many of you will know. And the first one and largest of the 3 is the medicine subspecialty match. And I think what I'll draw your attention to here is that over time, the last 3 years, there have been an increase of 12% between 2016 and 2019 in the number of matched applicants. And the number of positions available in that same period has gone from 489 to 538. So a pretty considerable increase in the number of positions available. So that's the MSM match. And the next match we'll turn to is the family medicine to emergency medicine match, and that is for those who are finishing their second year of a family medicine program. They'd like to go into a third year deeper into a particular enhanced skill, in this case emergency medicine. So that's what that match has typically been. This year, in 2019, for the first time, we've added additional enhanced skills programs, particularly in the province of Quebec. So that's why you'll see the numbers have grown a little bit and shifted from what they have been pretty consistent over the last 3 years. And then finally, but not leastly, the pediatric subspecialty match. And it's the smallest of the 3 subspecialty matches, but very important for those colleagues that are looking to advance their training, and a pretty consistent trend over time with a bit of growth in available positions. So now we'll jump into the RM1 match, the jumelage R1. So 4 key themes emerged as we looked at the data, and there's going to be other things that will emerge for you and that you'll be interested in, but for us, these are the 4 themes that kind of popped up. Number 1 is that the increases in opportunities nationally, and that's after some number of years of pretty flat and maybe even some declining in opportunities nationally. Even with that, the fill rates, so the percentage of positions filled across the country increased, so more opportunities and a higher fill rate. And in addition, a continuing trend is that Canadian medical graduates are having increased concentration of interest as measured by first choice discipline in what are already high demand disciplines. So think plastic surgery, dermatology, urology, more interest is in those high demand. So that's a bit of a continuing concentration of interest. And then finally, fewer unmatched Canadian medical graduates. Now, we released a bit of a high-level overview of the match, so some of these numbers will not be a surprise to you. You will have seen those on Wednesday. So we're going to review some of those more, but again some more layers lower into some of those facets. So this is an overview. So I'll orient you a little bit to what you're seeing here. This is the applicant pool, and we break down our applicant pool into 3 main groupings: Canadian medical graduates, so those are graduates of one of the 17 faculties in Canada; U.S. medical graduates, either allopathic or osteopathic graduates; and international medical graduates, so those who have graduated from a medical school outside of Canada or the U.S. A registrant is somebody who simply indicates their initial intent to participate in the match. They register, and then for whatever reason, folks decide to withdraw and not continue on to actually apply to a program. Active applicants are those who apply to at least one program. For some reason, so folks do not submit a rank order list indicating their intent to train somewhere that they've applied. And so you have relatively few number of those. And then finally, the final participants are 4,746 applicants who submitted at least one rank on a rank order list. So that's the applicant pool for this year. Now this is a very busy slide, so we'll take a little bit of time to unpack it. We have 2 iterations, as I'm sure everybody here knows. And the first iteration is typically, other than in Quebec, It's broken into two primary streams, a Canadian medical graduate stream and an international medical graduate stream in Quebec. They're competitive, so both IMGs and CMGs compete on an equal footing. So first iteration, you'll see the number matched, the match rate, the number unmatched for both current year graduates and previous year's graduates. Current year graduates, at least from a Canadian medical graduate perspective, are those that we actually get on lists from the undergraduate schools. And for some of these folks that are considered current year graduates, this may not be their first time participating in the match. They may have participated in a prior year, they go back, and they are still part of the faculty, so they're still on a class list, so they're considered a current year graduate from a data perspective, as opposed to previous year graduates who may have participated in the match before, they may not have matched, but they're not on a current year list. So there's a bit of nuancing, and we often get questions about, is this cohort in here, is this cohort in here, how do you measure all that? So that's essentially the breakdown. So the results of first iteration, I can tell you that the match percentage for both Canadian grads and and international grads was considerably higher than in previous years. The last couple of years, IMGs were at 46%, so 50% is an uptick. And then so going into second iteration, then those who do not match in first iteration, or those who didn't participate in first iteration and only participate in second iteration, that can happen, particularly for international graduates where they may not be programs of opportunity for them. So some only participate in second iteration for IMGs. So again, the same kind of breakdown here. And the one thing I'll draw your attention to for second iteration is that there was a change in eligibility in Alberta and Ontario, whereas in previous years, what had been Canadian graduate streams, international graduate streams were blended, and then both groups were able to compete on an equal footing in the second iteration. This year, those streams were maintained separate in the second iteration. So that's one pretty substantial difference in how the eligibility worked in the second iteration. So the number here, and we called out the number of unmatched graduates being quite low. So 31 is the lowest number since 2011, when there were 23. So we measure unmatched current year graduates as those who participated in both first and second iteration and are in the current year. So that's our definition. There's lots of different conversations about unmatched, and people use a variety of different kind of definitions of it, what's in, what's out. So that's the definition that we use here that you'll see. So 3,346 available positions, 98.4% fill rate. Last year, 78 unfilled. This year, 52. So a considerable change, not only in the numbers, but in the fill rate. So moving on to a bit more of a focus on the program view. So you'll see this is broken down by region. And I mentioned 3,346 positions. Last year, 3,309 in 2018. And Quebec had the most dramatic reduction in unfilled positions. There were 69 last year, 69 in Quebec, 29 this year. So less than half unfilled positions. And there's a bit of a storyline around that we'll get to in the coming slides. So this unfilled decline, that's at the same time increasing positions in all regions. So higher fill rate and larger number of positions. So here's a breakdown of the applicant. This is now a CMG-oriented slide around at the regional level. So for pretty much every one of these kind of views, whether it's the percent match by region, almost every one of those views has increased from last year in terms of match percentage. Almost every region, in whether it's first iteration or second iteration. So that's a sign of some very interesting things happening, again, which we'll get into more detail. So every region went down in terms of its percentage. So the national from 2.4 last year to 1.1. Eastern region stayed flat to last year. They were already at a relatively low rate. So that certainly is a very good news story for Canadian medical graduates. And while the 31 who did not match, that is a difficult situation. It certainly is a markedly low number. Here's a view for the last 3 years of international medical graduate results broken down by a region of medical school. So again, this has got nothing to do with where somebody's born or where their citizenship is. This is about where they graduated from medical school. Quite consistent rates over the last 3 years from all these regions, with the exception of South America, which dropped from 24% down to about 11%. Now those ends are relatively small, so it doesn't take a lot of shift to make a big percentage decrease. But so by and large, pretty consistent results over the last few years. So this view, and I find this view quite interesting because it tells you a lot about what's been happening over time with who is filling the positions in Canada. So the burgundy on the far left-hand side are previous year Canadian medical graduates. The blue are current year Canadian medical graduates. Green are international graduates. And then the 22 is on the 2019 is United States medical graduates. So you can see that the 3,294 positions filled is the most ever. Most we've ever filled through the R1 match. So that is, I think from a Canadian healthcare system perspective, that is a very good news story. It's also the most CMGs who will be entering postgrad training on July 1st in any single year. So this is, we talked about the kind of what is considered a current year graduate or a previous year graduate. So this actually breaks down that number who previously participated in first iteration. So, and one thing I'll actually draw your attention to is the significant decline in the returning current year graduate slide. And does this have a little ability to point? No? No, okay. So the third bar down, you'll see that the total of 44 returning current year graduates, this year 21. So that's a significant decline, and you may recall last year that there were supernumerary positions made available post-second iteration in Ontario and through the Department of National Defence in family medicine programs with DND, but there were other positions available through Ontario. So 38 positions were filled from the folks who did not match in second iteration last year. So that took out quite a considerable number of people to return to the match this year. This is, I have an interest in this, so you'll have to kind of just bear with me. This is the percentage of IMGs who submitted a rank order list. There is some school of thought that says if you submit a rank order list, then you must have had an interview. And there's a bit of a kind of logical thinking that why would you submit a rank order list if you didn't submit an interview? I'm not so sure that that's true in all cases. Now the good news is we're going to be introducing a system next year that's going to track whether or not programs offer an interview. So there's one of the outcomes of the interview communication system is we're going to have some data that'll be able to correlate with the ROLs just to see if that hypothesis is true or not. But you can see this number is relatively flat over time, pretty high rate. I can tell you if I were in this system, I would say what's the cost? Why not submit a rank order list, whether you interviewed or not? That's just me. So we're going to get some actual data as opposed to a hypothesis next year. So now we're going to do a deeper dive into the opportunities, participation, and choices. So here's a picture, big system picture view of the participation and quota available in first iteration. So the column is the quota. Blue is for CMG, pink or fuchsia is the IMG, and then the blue line, which you see increasing, and the IMG is the burgundy line, which is decreased. So pretty flat quota across a number of years. So you can't see much in the way of movement up and down. But again, this year we know there's been some increase. CMG participation has grown slightly every year. IMGs, that inflection point of 2015, that's when the NACOSCI was introduced. So there was a bit of a change in participation for IMG group. Now this is this particular slide gets a lot of attention because it has some important information in it, and I'll orient you. So the blue column is the number of applicants, CMG applicants, current year. The green little bar at the top is the number of previous year. The burgundy dash, that's quota available. So you can see in 2016, 2017, 2018, the top of the bar and the dash were real close. So that ratio we actually took it to 3 decimal places because it was getting pretty tight. So, but the 1.029 this year is the highest it's been since 2015. So there's a lot of attention paid to this ratio, and so that is the highest it's been since 2015. Now this is a slide that breaks down the opportunities, positions available, again for CMGs, by discipline groups. So this is the first time you're going to see this breakdown. We break it down into 4 major categories: family medicine, internal medicine, surgical specialties, and non-surgical specialties. So the blue is family medicine, the green is internal medicine, the surgical is the burgundy, and then the orange, or I guess that's orange, is non-surgical. So you can see that every one of the discipline groupings increased from last year. So not only was there increase across the board nationally, but every one of the discipline groupings also increased from last year. So 43.6. So one of the things that there's a lot of attention to primary care and making sure people have a family doctor for them. So in 2013, the number of family medicine physicians as a proportion of the total was 43.6%. This year it's 46. So not only has the absolute number gone up, but the proportion has also gone up. And if anybody was wondering, there's been some questions from time to time as where does obstetrics gynecology fit? It's in the surgical specialties, just so that's consistent with Royal College and other groups that classify. This slide is a bit of a calling out some of the big movement in disciplines over the last 2014 to 2019. So the upper right-hand quadrant are the disciplines that increased in the number of positions over that time. And these are disciplines that have more than 50 positions available. So these are the big disciplines. So the upper right-hand quadrant are those that increased, and the vertical axis is the number of positions, the horizontal axis is the percentage gain, and the lower left-hand quadrant are those that actually had reductions in disciplines. So I'm actually, this isn't actually in the script, so people will give me the evil eye. So I have a question. Anybody want to posit an opinion as to what are some of the underlying factors that are driving some of these changes in disciplines? I have my own theories, but they don't matter very much. So anybody want to talk a little bit about what's going on here that these particular disciplines are changing? I know you have some very... Population needs, yeah, okay. And any particular aspect of population change that is... I guess I see psychiatry, so the focus on mental health. Getting older, okay, so, yeah. Sorry? So this is something that I think it kind of tells some stories here. For me, the mental health focus is one that comes through loud and clear. The aging population, not as many kids, kind of comes through loud and clear. I think there's some change in how babies are delivered. So midwives are doing work maybe that was done by obstetricians before. So that's my own theory. So interested to chat again over a glass of wine about some of your thoughts. This is so we have 4,700 applicants. We have 3,300 positions. And in order for those two groups to come together, there has to be a way in which they inform each other about A, interest, on the part of an applicant. I'm interested in that program, and here are my qualifications. And that's what an application is. An application is an applicant saying to a program, I am interested in attending there and training there, and here's why I think you should be interested in me. And that's an application. So we operate a system that is open, people are free to choose, and this application trend, if you will, I think is evidence of the fact that it is an open market, to coin a term. So the number of applications across all disciplines has been going up and up and up. Not terribly surprising given that the number of applicants are going up, as well as the quota going up. So this is a bit of a view over time of that. And here's that same view for internal medicine. You'll see that there was a bit of a dip in 2018, and we're going to get into the concept of supply and demand here shortly. But you'll see that the interest in some of these disciplines goes a bit up and down over time, and we have an interactive data worksheet on the CaRMS.ca, which shows some interesting patterns, a bit of a sawtooth sometimes. I think people kind of chase positions. If there's a lot of interest one year, then people don't pursue it the next year, and then they go up and then it goes down. So there's a little bit of that we see. And this is family medicine. And we'll just go back here to see internal medicine. So you'll see the very small column at the bottom there. That's the number of sites where programs are delivered, where training is delivered. And family medicine, you can see it a little bit easier here. So the number has gone from 111 sites where family medicine training is delivered to now 136 from 2013 to 2019. This is the average number of program applications for CMGs and IMGs. You can see the big drop from 2017 to 2018 for IMGs. That's when there were some eligibility changes in British Columbia. So the number of IMGs able to apply in British Columbia went down. So therefore, because BC has a lot of family medicine sites, and you'll see in a minute that family medicine is a pretty popular choice for IMGs, those two things taken together give you a reduction in the average. So a continuing bit of a climb, though, certainly for CMGs. And here's the breakdown by region. So you can see that, from a sheer numbers point of view, so nationally you can see the increase, and then the very top line, that's Western Canada. So Western Canada we consider to be BC, the two Alberta schools, Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And then the blue line is Ontario, Quebec is the green line, and then the orange line is Eastern Canada, MUN and DAL. So interestingly though, the biggest percentage increase over time has been in Quebec. So if you look at 2016 at 9.4 and 2019 at 13.5, that's a 44% increase in the average number of applications submitted by Quebec applicants. That's a big increase. So although they're the lowest number on average across the country, they have the biggest increase. So now here's a breakdown of those same categories in terms of CMG discipline choices. So 33% for family medicine, that's held quite steady over the last number of years. Internal medicine has kind of waxed and waned a bit over time, and now it's up to 15.7%. Surgical disciplines, actually has come down from up 20%, quite high in 2013, now to 17% in 2019, and an increase in the non-surgical disciplines over time. And this is the complementary view for IMGs, and you'll notice that family medicine is much higher as a percentage, followed by non-surgical disciplines. And surgical disciplines, there are relatively few opportunities available to IMGs in those IMG streams. So that, I think, speaks to the fact that the opportunities and the interest pretty much match each other. And I should say that CMG, this is first iteration only, but for IMGs, because of the preponderance of second iteration participation for IMGs, we included both iterations. So this is the first time we're going to look at this concept of supply and demand. And supply, in the context of this view, are the number of available positions in a particular discipline. And demand are the number of applicants choosing that discipline as first choice on their rank order list. Not they applied, but what they ranked. So interestingly here, so you can see family medicine has increased, so the blue bar increasing means that there's more supply available as against demand, and that oversupply, if you will, and this is not a judgment comment, that's just a kind of an economic comment, that increased supply has happened over time. Interesting, this year there's a bit of a convergence. All 4 regions seem to have converged around the mean, if you will, and I mentioned that in Quebec the number of unfilled positions were quite a bit lower than last year, where a lot of that reduction came in family medicine. So you can see Quebec, and Quebec is the green line. So that coming down means that there's actually more demand in Quebec for family medicine. So more demand in Quebec family medicine equals fewer unfilled positions in family medicine in Quebec. So that's a nice correlation there, and I know there's been some pretty strong work in Quebec to promote and encourage folks to be open to family medicine as an option. So there's some things happening here that has shifted that trend. Here's internal medicine, a bit of a sawtooth thing. That's Eastern region has a relatively few. It's small but mighty, but the numbers are relatively small there. So small changes in numbers can mean big changes in percentages. And here's surgical disciplines. So a continuing decline. So while there has been lower, and we looked earlier at the interest in surgical disciplines, so that has been coming down over time, but in fact the reduction in the number of positions available has actually outpaced the reduction in interest. And we looked at that with the 4 quadrants that said where are the reductions coming from, where 3 out of 4 of those disciplines were surgical disciplines. So you get decreased interest, even greater decrease in availability, so you get that tightening of the ratio. Well, look at Quebec, less than 1 position available for every 2 applicants who want a surgical discipline as first choice. So that's a very, they're all competitive. Any discipline that has more than 1 applicant is competitive, but that is a very difficult ratio. And then this is non-surgical. 6 years of increasingly tighter national supply, but as a national ratio, supply and demand, and then Eastern region, I guess, bucking that trend a little bit over the last 3 years. And now here's a slide that I'll just take a moment to orient you. So each discipline has, and we just go back here, and we'll look at, so non-surgical disciplines. If you were to look at that as a discipline, we would call that a high demand discipline. There's more demand than supply. Contrast that with family medicine, where there's more supply than demand. So every discipline can be categorized as either a high supply discipline or a high demand discipline. So now we go forward to this slide. And this tells you, of all the CMG first choice disciplines, how many chose a high demand discipline or a high supply discipline. And the thing I'll draw your attention to is that increased volume on the bottom of the column, from 31% choosing a high demand discipline to now 45% choosing a high demand discipline. So that's what I've talked about, one of the themes. So the greater concentration in high demand disciplines, that's where you see that. So 2 things are happening. Number 1 is that the shift in the non-surgical disciplines to becoming more interest in those non-surgical disciplines by about 4.9%, and those are all by and large high demand. And then 2 large disciplines, psychiatry and internal medicine, have shifted from being what once were high supply, so more than a 1-to-1 ratio of available positions to first choice discipline, to more demand than supply. So psychiatry and internal medicine Both have shifted to become a high demand discipline. So that's why those numbers have gone up quite dramatically from 31 to 45. So with that, and we looked at some of those trends, at least as particularly across the regions. I wanted to look at what's the match rate. Can we look at what the impact of those choices are from a match success perspective? So I wanted to look at the high demand disciplines against some other comparators. So the blue column on the far right hand side are the high demand disciplines taken together and the match success for those with one of those disciplines as first choice. So about 91%, and pretty consistent from 2013 to 2019, not much change. And if you look at everybody, to the far left-hand side, 95%, slight reduction, and we know that that's been happening, so that's where the unmatched comes from. And then for family medicine as first choice, quite consistent, so 97+% success rate for those with family medicine as first choice. Now you would think that given the increased concentration in high demand, so we looked at this slide here, there's more demand in those high demand disciplines, so what's happening that the match rate is just as high. So that is a question. And so here's one particular look at it. If you did choose one of those high demand disciplines and only chose one of those high demand disciplines, then you did see a lower success rate from 85% to 80%. So if you chose one of those, that stands to reason. For both, if you chose first one discipline for family medicine, you actually, interestingly, you pretty much stayed the same, and for all the applicants, again, stayed pretty much the same. So why did that number stay the same and that number go down? Well, the reason is that fewer people are choosing one discipline and one discipline only. So particularly in those choosing a high demand discipline, the number choosing only one discipline, ranking only one discipline, went from 33% to 24%. So people are still pursuing their interest, pursuing their passion, but they're also mitigating with some additional disciplines that they're open to. And that's certainly consistent with what we hear from undergrad, student affairs, learner leaders, that there's some encouragement to be open to other opportunities, particularly when you're in a situation where there's a lot of demand on a relatively few number of opportunities. So now we're going to go to Slido. So the first question we have is, can you explain why interest in surgery specialties are a reason for high unmatched rates when the data shows that CMG interest in it stayed steady over time? Well, they mentioned the number of available positions is lower. That's so interest over time has stayed pretty much the same, but the number of positions available has been lower. Can you speak to the consistently unfilled seats in Quebec? How are they affecting match rates across the country? As I mentioned, the number of unfilled positions in Quebec declined dramatically this year. A lot of them were in family medicine. A lot of them, as I talk to people, are in parts of the province that are not necessarily places where folks want to live. They're rural communities, so they do have a bit of a have to make a lifestyle choice. So I think there's some of those are factored, but different results this year. Quite a few. I think only 23 last year. There was 65 in family. 65 unfilled family medicine positions in Quebec last year. 23 this year. So I think that trend has been has pivoted quite a bit. Our match rate better this year than last year because people have responded by changing how they approach the match. Well, as I said, the number of people using only one discipline in their rank has gone down. So to me, that is a pretty clear sign that that's true. Yeah. How come there are unfilled positions for R3 programs? I think the reason why is that there's not a match. You might have positions that are available, and people who want positions, but they're not in the same place. I think that's by and large why those things don't match up. What is returning current year graduate? Somebody who is participated in a match previously was not successful and then came back within their faculty and are considered what's called a fifth year current year graduate. Is there a relationship between the increased number of applications and the increased number of distributed sites that a student can apply? I think there is. And in fact, we're going to talk about that in a minute here. I think there is a relationship. We saw 111 family medicine sites in 2013, and now there's 136. So if you have to apply to more places to access the same quota, then that's going to increase the number of applications. And I know a number of faculty have different strategies as to how they deal with that. They will do joint interviews, so they'll do a lot of things that help, kind of reduce the amount of churn within the system. But certainly from a sheer application point of view, that could be a driver, absolutely. Differentiating rural family medicine from urban family medicine in terms of high supply or demand. I think we could. I see Jennifer, you in the, yeah, I think we could do that. I'm not sure. I suspect we could do that with a bit of correlation with CFPC on what's on the definition and use some geographic information to help do that. Yeah. I know we're capturing questions like this, so we'll take this away and see what we can do about that. In my expert opinion, where do you foresee the future of the demand for medical professionals heading? What specialty will be more in demand? My expert opinion in that would be of limited value. But there are lots of people who do. There's lots of. I've attended a couple of Royal College meetings where the place of AI and big data in the practice of medicine has been discussed with very knowledgeable people who have some vision about what this might look like and what is the role of the doctor going to be. So you don't have to go very far to find all kinds of thoughts about it, and I can show you my opinion again over a glass of wine. But I think things are going to change, no doubt. And I think some of those things you see actually in the trends. Whether it's orthopedic surgery, where technology and scope of practice and how things are done, it changes the demand for certain kinds of work. And it's not just medicine. This goes on around the world. So I suspect the answer to that is yes. How can we explain is there data on success rate of matched to first choice discipline compared between CMGs applying to single discipline or multiple disciplines? Yes, there is. We will make it a point to get that on one of our next data cycles. I've seen it, we just haven't produced it for this. We like to scrub things pretty clean before we bring it to you folks. But I've seen the numbers, so we'll do that for the next go around. How can we explain the incredibly low supply to demand ratio for surgical specialties in Quebec as opposed to a high ratio for family medicine? Well, that's a function of applicant choice, essentially as against the available opportunities. So it's a numbers thing. The number of people interested as first choice versus the availability. So whether it's the a lower relative number of surgical discipline available versus the norm across the country, or whether it's demand, I think that is worthy of. So I should reel myself back on that conclusion that it's about applicants. It could be about the ratio as compared to what the national average is. So that's another thing we should take away and do a deeper dive on that. Is that about demand or is it about supply? And you could ask that question about really any of these things. Is that about demand changing or supply changing? So how are we doing for time? Should go? Okay. So may or may not be able to answer every question that we receive. We'll do our very best, but I think our commitment has always been that if we get a question we can't answer, we'll make sure we answer it and get it up on CaRMS.ca. So some detailed outcomes here. This is a match success for IMGs based on number of attempts at the match. So the blue line are those who is their first match participation. The burgundy line are those with 2 or 3 attempts, and the green line is for 3 or more. So not surprisingly, as you continue, if you're not successful the first time, then your likelihood of success somewhat diminishes over time. This is a view of frequency distribution of where Canadian medical graduates match on their rank order list. So 1,444 out of 2,700 and some odd matched to their very first choice. So that's about a 55% rate. Drops off considerably after that. The top 5, so 88% of all CMGs match in one of their top 5 ranks. And then the line is actually the number of average applications for all those people who ranked at that point. So 100 and somebody, there was an average, and that was one person, so if somebody had 101 applications, it is uncommon, but it's not extraordinarily rare. 52, 45. So there are some who do match at their 35th rank. This is the view for couples. Because it's a lower number, it's a bit more of a ragged curve. And what I'll say about this is that this is actually for the individuals within the couples match. So when you're a couple, you have a joint rank order list, but you each have your own individual preference list. So what this is an indication of where each individual ranked on their own individual preference list. Because some people, in fact, this year there were 6 couples who, as part of what an acceptable quote-unquote match was, is that one of the partners would be unmatched. So we say, when we say all the couples matched, that actually means that their joint rank order list, we found a successful outcome, but one of those partners chose that, hey, I'd be okay if I didn't match. And that happens. So this is a CMG first choice discipline success rate, and pretty steady around 86 some odd % for the last 3 years. I think it's a metric we use just to see how are people doing with their choices. And then this is that same view, but by region. And you can see Quebec, and we saw from the supply-demand ratio of the various categories how much lower, how tight the ratio was for some of those disciplines for Quebec. And so you can see that is indicative in this slide. However, on the contrary of that, is that because of the increased application to family medicine, it's actually gone up this last year. So this is the CMG's matching to first choice discipline by discipline group. So family medicine has stayed very consistent over time with above a 99% rate. Internal medicine has gone up in the last couple of years. And non-surgical disciplines, again, not surprisingly given the availability against the demand, non-surgical disciplines have gone down. And surgical also gone down, but a bit of an uptick this year. So this is what percentage of applicants, CMG applicants, match to one of their top 3 program choices. Again, a decline, and which brings us to a poll. And the question for you is, which discipline groups? So we have 4 discipline groups: family medicine, internal medicine, surgical, and non-surgical. Which discipline group has the lowest rate of CMGs matching to one of their top 3 program choices? Okay, let's see what the survey says. Surgical disciplines. No, so that would be the intuitive thinking. So let's see what the data actually says. Family medicine. Family medicine has the lowest number of applicants who match to their top 3 program choices. So you say, what the devil's going on there? With first choice discipline success rate of 99%. So let's come back to what's happening with the number of program sites, the number of training sites. If you have more sites you have to apply to access the same quota, you have to have more on your rank order list. The likelihood of actually matching it on one of those top 3 is somewhat diminished. Because I can tell you that the number of disciplines, people who choose family medicine as first choice, has not declined any. The number of schools they apply to hasn't changed any. And that really only leaves the number of sites that are available. And I know that, and a very good reason why the number of sites has increased, because the programs wanted to give applicants choice to be more precise about where it is exactly they want to train. So there's some thinking behind why that is, but again, it just gives you a bit of a rationale. I think there's some more data we can bring to that to put a bit more of a pinpoint to it, but there's some good cause and effect there. Mobility. This is a national system, and we are a national system that encourages and makes available mobility. You can go and train anywhere you are interested in, you're qualified for. So you can express your interest to that, and you can see the mobility is pretty strong. So that the blue is people who stay at their home school. The green is you leave your school but stay in the province, and then the burgundy is you're leaving the province. So pretty consistent over time. And this is a breakdown of what that looks like at the regional level. So the color within the column is the same as the color of the name of the region, if you will. So Quebec is the biggest the province where people tend to stay at in the province. I was actually talking to Ramona Kearney. Many of you will know, postgrad dean at U of A, who's a Newfoundlander, and I'm from PEI. So we said, when you're in Atlantic Canada, you are open to opportunities and open to moving and going someplace else. And Alberta is peppered with people from the East Coast, and so we're open to this. So but there's just different kind of cultural things and also the opportunities, where the opportunities are. But this just gives you a bit of a pattern of how folks are thinking about where they attend their postgraduate training. So we're just turning attention to some of the outcomes from second iteration in particular. So what this tells you is for those who filled positions in second iteration, of the various cohorts, which category did they match to? So you'll see for current year CMG, so predominantly family medicine, but quite a good selection of opportunities available in other disciplines. So that's the breakdown by cohort. And this is the breakdown over time of the cohorts who filled positions in second iteration. And there's some pretty interesting trends there, and I suspect you could draw some correlation to changes in eligibility this year in some of those outcomes. Now I mentioned CMG electives, so for the first time this year we published data around electives. And various profiles of numbers of electives, whether people matched or were ranked with various profiles of electives. So all that's on CaRMS.ca, just so we thought we'd share a bit of a sampling of that. And the first one we'll see is the number of elective disciplines CMGs took their electives in. So now remember, this is self-reported. And we're quite confident that that applicants are self-reporting accurately, but it is self-reported. We have no particular way of validating, but we're pretty confident. So, and this is unmatched. This is matched and unmatched. So the matched is the blue line, and unmatched is the burgundy line. So actually, unmatched applicants have a higher, and this is, I wouldn't call it statistically significant necessarily, but it is on average higher. But quite a significant drop this year, and I'm pretty curious about that, and we haven't dug too deep into that, but that's dropped from 6.2 to 5. Now that may again be because the N is so much smaller. So now we have 31 unmatched applicants, so that may be it. Maybe it's just a small sample size. But we'll dig a bit more into that. Now this is the next poll, just to see what your thoughts are on a particular aspect of this. So we just saw the number of disciplines where the people were taking electives. The question here is, what's the average number of electives, total number of electives at CMGs who matched in the first iteration this year reported? And those are your choices: 4.1, 6.3, 9.5, 12.5, and 18.7. Okay, let's see what we say. Okay, so pretty interesting. So let's have a look at the actual number. So 9.5, so the average number of electives, which again, the unmatched declined quite a bit. I'm pretty curious about what the sample size there and how much of that plays into it. So an increase, pretty steady increase for the matched applicants over time, now at 9.5 on average. So now we're going to turn our attention to unmatched Canadian grads and unfilled positions. So this is a graph we've been showing every year, and it was a bit of a troubling graph, particularly when you put the human face on what that means for those who were not successful in the match. This year, that blue line dropped considerably, as you can see, so down from 69 to 31. So again, the definition of unmatched that this is measuring are those who participated in the second iteration and did not match. Current year grads who participated in the second iteration and did not match. So it went from 69 to 31. The other thing we have started to report last year are the number of people who did not match in first iteration and did not participate in the second iteration. And people do that for different reasons. One thing I can tell you of the 36 who didn't participate in second iteration is that for 23 of them, there were no positions available in their first choice discipline from first iteration. So that may simply have been a choice of, well, what I'm interested in is not available. That's a statement of fact. Whether that's a cause and effect, hard to say, but that is a pretty consistent picture from year to year, that the numbers of people who don't participate often are those where there are no positions available. And this is a categorization based on the ranking profile for each one of the applicants who did not match, so 31 this year. The number of, so the blue are how many applicants were ranked by at least one program on their rank order list. The bottom right hand, sort of at about 4 o'clock there, 16% those that were ranked by every program that they applied to. The far right-hand side, sort of 3 o'clock, is not ranked by any program, and then the green are people who would have matched, but they didn't rank the program. That's 5 people. 5 people, and it happens. We know it happens, is that people apply, they attend an interview, they have a conversation, and then it turns out, no, not going to, I'm not interested in that. And that's, so that we've always had at least one person. This is the highest percentage and the highest number of people that situation is related to. And so we track not only current year match results, match success, but also over the long haul. And we have seen that if you take the year people graduate and the next 2 subsequent years of participation in the match, that the match success rate is in around 99.5%. So 1 cycle, 2 cycle, 3 cycles. Now, in 2018, you see it's at 98.2%. Remember that of the 44, and we call them unknown journey because we don't actually have any data on them, but these are the folks who took advantage of the supernumerary positions, the 38. So if you adjust that 44 by that 38, you'll get back up to the 99.5%. So we're pretty much at that same level, which to me is reflective of a system that while it's hard work and it's anxiety producing, and I can tell you as somebody who's looked for a job and hired people, that is hard work. But 99.5% I think is a testament to a system that actually does what it's supposed to do. And here's a map, and I can tell you when we looked at this map last year, it was hard stuff. Unmatched applicants, unfilled positions. Things were not really jiving the way they should. Well, this is a very different map. So 52 unfilled positions as against 78. 31 unmatched graduates versus 69. That unmatched previous year CMG, that 31, that includes 15 who have prior post-grad training. So notionally, folks who are looking to use a second iteration as a transfer mechanism. And so we do include those applicants in that 31, but just wanted to give you that context. So coming back to our themes, increased opportunities across the country this year as against last year. With that, still higher fill rates, more interest in CMG for CMGs in those high demand disciplines, and fewer unmatched CMGs. So those are the themes, lots of data. Now we have lots of time, so I will go back and ask questions, or answer questions. I could ask questions too, you never know. Can you please share the match rates for both first and second iteration by school rather than just by region? Sure. I think we can. We'll see if we can do that for next year. We usually talk to the schools about their individual match results, and we actually do with the schools. We share with the faculty deans their individual school match results. So we'll do a bit of a consultation and see what people's openness is to sharing those things. Usually they are, but we out of respect for their data, we will ask them. Can you speak about specific stats for non-surgical and surgical disciplines? Specific stats in terms of, I'm not sure who answered. So in terms of the ratios, is that what we're talking about? Nobody here. So I can tell you that there's what we call the pre-roll. So as you are arriving, there was a whole series of data sort of flowing on the screens, and that particular data will also be shared with the CaRMS forum deck. And there's a lot more data at a discipline level in those slides. So if you don't find what you're looking for there, go onto carms.ca, go to the data request portal, and ask the question. We're happy to answer. What's the number of people that ranked family medicine second? Has that gone up? That's a good question. The second discipline choice has certainly been, that's where a lot of the opportunity is in family medicine, so certainly there has been an increase there. Is there data comparing the number of graduating medical students from each province and the number of residence spots available in that province? Yes, there is. Yes, there is. We've actually done some analysis on that. I'm not sure if we find it on the website, but we'll take that away. We have done that analysis before. How do you think the new electives diversification policy from the AFMC will affect match rates? I do not think about whether it will or won't. So to be quite honest with you, I suspect it'll create all kinds of different pressures and changes in thinking, both from applicants and programs. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that actually unfolds. I mean, as I looked at it, it seemed that there was a pretty good diversification in electives. 6 disciplines where electives are taken, 10 electives. So I'm not sure what the measure of diversification is. I'm not sure whether there is or isn't a target of diversification, but I guess we'll see. Why are percent position fill rates so low when there are so many going unmatched in the subspecialty match? Again, I suspect it's because of alignment of interest and availability at the program level. So if you're interested in pediatric nephrology, I'm not looking, you're not a pediatrician. So I suspect it's about an issue of alignment of opportunity, specifically at the program level with people's interest. Why are match rates higher this year? Well, the factors that come to mind are the ratio, so more opportunities. And in Quebec, I think the increased interest in family medicine, as evidenced by the higher fill rates of family medicine, that's another part. The fact that the 38 who were unmatched in second iteration last year had opportunities to fill one of those supernumerary positions, which meant that there were 38 fewer folks coming back into the match. I think that's a factor. So I think it's a lot of things kind of taken together. The fact that there are fewer people ranking one discipline and one discipline only in those high demand disciplines. I think that's a factor. So there's lots of things taken together that as, and I know I'm looking at my student affair and undergrad colleagues who advise and give folks, consider this. I think that has had a bearing. So lots of factors which have led to that result. How has the deblending of streams in second iteration impacted the match? Any data on this for Ontario and Alberta? We have not produced data for this. I suspect we will be, I think we have to ask the right questions in order to get data that's meaningful. So I do not know, I cannot give you an answer as to how that has impacted the match. My guess is it has, but it also has had an impact on being able to fill positions. So there's a couple of things that have occurred, and I'm quite certain that the policymakers, and they'll ask us for data, we'll take a step back and actually assess this and consider, for next cycle. Yeah.
Hi, I wonder if you could reinterpret your key themes with a view to IMG positions. They seem very CMG centric.
They are, yeah. So so reinterpret, so the opportunities nationally pretty flat for IMGs. Fill rates, they're always strong. They're always strong for IMGs. Match rates, IMGs went from 46% in first iteration to 50%, so a bit of an uptick from that perspective. And IMGs, from what I've seen, they will pursue the opportunities, and there's much higher demand than there is availability, and that is just simply a true statement of the opportunities.
Was there opportunity in the second iteration decreased this year with the change in streaming?
So the question would be, were the number of positions available to IMGs decreased in second iteration? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have that number off the top of my head. We can get that though, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have you considered having students rank programs before and after the interview? This could allow analysis on the algorithm for matching to minimize unmatched. Having rank programs before and after the interview. Haven't considered that. Have to chew on that a little bit. To what extent did the temporary increase in residency spots due to spots for docs influence this year's lower? Spots for docs. What is that? I'm not familiar with that. It says it's in quotes, due to spots for docs. Oh, sorry. So tell us about it.
It was a student rally around the time before the 53 spots were added. Not necessarily causal, but...
Oh, so like last year?
Yes, last
Gotcha. Okay. Well, as I mentioned, I think the fact that there were 38 took advantage of those positions did have an influence on the pressure on the system this year. So to the extent that spots for docs allowed for some of those things to happen, then it had some desired effect. Should we be worried of the high unmatched rates for the subspecialty matches? I haven't really put my mind to it. I think the people that I would look to if they're worried are the people who are trying to fill positions. I don't hear a lot of angst from folks about those rates. As I said, the opportunities are there. The applicants certainly know where the opportunities are. So I haven't heard any great amount of angst about the outcomes, but certainly open to hearing about it. Do the regions refer to where students match or where students are from? It's where students are from. So if it's about applicant interest, it's about where they're from. If it's about where they filled, it's about where the positions are. Will you show the applicant to spot ratio per discipline? Applicant to spot ratio per discipline. Sure, you can actually go to CaRMS.ca in the interactive graph and actually see that data, and we'll have that updated. I'm looking to Rob now, so that data is up to date now for 2019 by discipline. Do you track trends on applicants who do not match? No, once they're matched, we don't really track things longitudinally. I know CAPER does, I suspect, but we think we correlate whether people match or don't match in first or second time around. Can we reach out to people who go unmatched because they didn't rank a program? They rank them before results are released to give them the option to add it. We could. If, yeah, we could, although people ask me what advice I give them, when they're doing their application or rank order list, and I say eyes wide open. So if you choose not to rank something you applied to, then you're making an informed decision. That's my expectation. So the fact that a program, we always tell people, if you're interested in something, rank it. And that's the end of the story. And don't try to outguess whether the program will or won't rank you. Just express your true. The part that is so great about this process is you're free and safe to express your true preference, whether you want to rank something or don't want to something. Nobody will ever know. So there's no downside to ranking something but only do that if you're prepared to go there. So you didn't rank something because you didn't want to go there. That's a good choice.
John, you have a question?
Yes.
Hi, it's related to that last point. So the 16% that went unmatched that you said could have matched.
Yeah.
With those, did the programs later match somebody else? So that wasn't clear to me as we were going through. So I was just wondering, did those programs match somebody else, or were those unmatched programs after the second iteration?
It could have been both. Could have been both. So the person who didn't rank the program may have been higher on the program rank order list, but because they didn't rank them, then somebody on the program rank order list, below it did match, or it may have been an unfilled position. So both things, either one of those things could have happened. Yeah, good question. It's a great question. When was the last time the match algorithm changed? Will it be changed anytime in the near future? So the last time the algorithm changed was in 93. Sandra, are you still here? 93, 94? Yeah. So, and when it was changed for the couples? No, it was changed to the applicant proposing instead of program. So that was in 93? Okay. So that's the last time it was changed to become from program proposing to applicant proposing, which simply means that applicant gets their preference as that's what initiates the algorithm. So anybody who's interested, the basic algorithm is called the deferred acceptance algorithm. It's public source. You can actually go on the web and find a little bit about the math. How many CMGs enter the USA match? Does a rise in this account for the improved Canadian match rates at all? Relatively small numbers. So last year, I think 10 matched to the US, so relatively small numbers. How many CMGs enter the USA? Okay, so how should I use that to help me inform my CaRMS application, or should I? How much of it isn't just noise? Yeah, you can get twisted around in the data, and I think the one caution I would have is don't be looking for a silver bullet here. There's no magic recipe. There's no if I do this and I do that and I do that and I do that, then all this is going to happen. It just doesn't work that way. So the data is helpful, I think, in some ways. It can tell you where some trends are, but your best bet is to have a great application. To be clear on what you want, to be clear on what you're open to, and pursue what you're keen on. How long after graduation are CMGs eligible to enter the match? How long after graduation? Really, anytime. There's no sunset clause on when people can no longer participate. So there's no deadline. Could you comment more on the trend of IM and psych having more demand now than supply? So both internal medicine and psychiatry had increased number of positions available over time, but in fact the number of applicants who chose one of those disciplines as first choice went up faster than the increase in available positions. So those are the facts, and that's nationally. And I think if you wanted to tease that out, we actually show the for each discipline what the ratio is, and I mentioned that pre-roll slide. So if you go to the detailed slides, that'll be part of the deck that gets sent out. Each discipline kind of has its own ratio, and you can see this year and prior years. How is the family medicine match rate less than 20%? By match rate, do you mean people who choose it as first choice discipline? Is that, I guess I'm not sure. So let me go at it from both angles. So match rate, so the people who apply to family medicine as first choice, well, just because they apply to first choice doesn't mean that there will be a necessary program that they apply to who is interested in them as a trainee, or that those programs all filled before their place on the rank order list. They may have been ranked by every program, but others ranked matched ahead of them. Congratulations on working with partners to let medical students. Yeah, well, I hope that worked well. And in fact, we talked to our undergrad and student affairs colleagues today about that early information being made available. So we're going to do some fine tuning on that. So I'm glad it worked well. This year, Ontario is not planning to offer supernumerary positions. Without these, what's stopping match rates from going up again in the next year? Well, 31 current year means that there's a lot less pressure for next year. So I think that's one thing. And that ratio at almost just about 1.03, just gives us that bit more of a breathing space in terms of the opportunities as against the demand on it. Particular provinces had a lot of spots. It was well distributed across the country. Most provinces added some more than others. I know Nova Scotia added quite a few. Can you additionally report the match rate to family medicine overall as opposed to just the first choice? The match rate. And by match rate, so does that mean how many CMGs matched to family medicine? I wonder if that's the question. And if that's the question, the number is 40%. And that number has been very consistent over time. Is there data on the average number of interviews accepted by applicants? Data on the average number of interviews? There is not, but we will have the other side of that equation when the interview communication system is implemented next year. So we'll know how many interviews are offered, and then one of the next rounds would be, okay, now let's do the response to that. Is that invitation accepted, or is that invitation declined? So we don't have that data, but it could be something that happens in the next couple of cycles. How many people transfer between specialties after the match? There is, I think Jeff Caper has that, the transfer information. Yeah, so yeah, section K of the census. There we go. So Jeff Barnum from Caper. Thanks, Jeff. If the CMG goes unmatched, what are the chances that they will still be unmatched 5 years later? Well, I can tell you after 3 years, it's about half of 1%. After 5 years, it's down lower. It gets down to like 1s and 2s in the years after that. And for some, we don't really ever know because they perhaps go off and do something else. So we kind of lose sight of them, and they're what we call the unknown journey. So it's a pretty small number, though, in percentage terms. How does CaRMS handle MOTP match? MOTP is part of the match. They are designated positions. We work with our D&D colleagues to sort all that out and manage that process. Do CMGs that go unmatched in the first round who have no family practice elect to successfully match in the second round in family practice spots? That's a great question. We can get an answer to that question. I don't have the answer in my head right now. Quebec low ratio of supply demand for surgical specialty. Does this mean Quebec applicants leave Quebec? Sure. Sure it does. On the CaRMS websites, there are stats about the number of medical electives the students did in the specialty that matched in. Does each elective represent 1 or 2 weeks. Sorry? Whatever they answer. It's self-reported. Okay, I can see we're getting a little sparse in the room, so I think we'll take, is there anything in particular here that, we're gone, okay, gone. So moving on. So with that, I really want to thank you all for attending. So that's our Q&A, and just to remind you, if you are free and interested, join us Sunday for a deep dive into the two big initiatives, BPAS and Interview Communications. That'll be Sunday morning at Marriott on the Falls. And outside this room, we're going to have a drink together if you're interested and can stay with us, and a bite to eat. So if you haven't already registered on one of the iPads to get the CaRMS form deck sent to you directly, please do so. Again, thanks very, very much. Always fun to interact and chat with folks. So thanks again. Hope to have a terrific rest of your conference.